I'm president of the Wagner Society of Northern California, and I'm welcoming you tonight to this special presentation by Director Paul Curran on Tristan and Isolde. I'm sure that a lot of you are here because you plan to go see Tristan and you want to know a little bit more about it, and we welcome you here for this event today. Just a bit of housekeeping. After we're done with the lecture, we will have some time for you to ask questions. And then afterwards, we have some light refreshments, just some soft drinks and cookies. You're welcome to stay with that. Please feel free to mingle with one another. We all share the same passion. We love opera. We love sitting in the bar for hours on end, listening to beautiful music and people singing. And it brings joy to our lives. And we hope that this, in some small way, accomplishes that as well and deepens your understanding of Richard Wagner's work. The Richard Wagner Society of Northern California is beginning its 40th year here in San Francisco. And I've been a member for 30 years. So it's all been something that's enriched my lives and my many lives I've had. And it is, I always learn something new from these talks, things maybe I didn't have the room in my brain, or I didn't have the imagination to go some of the places I go when I hear some of these wonderful scholars and artists speak for us. So we're going to have the talk first, and you'll be able to ask our guests some questions, and then afterwards we have light refreshments. So that's the way it's going to run tonight. I'll introduce our guest today. This is the second time he's speaking for us. Paul Curran is a Scottish opera director, and he was the general manager, artistic director of the Norwegian National Opera, and artistic consultant to the Central City Opera in Denver. He was born in Glasgow, Scotland. He played the clarinet at school in the orchestra as a youth, and he saw his first opera, which is a Scottish opera production of Wozzeck. And still he persists in liking opera after that baptism. He later went to London where he trained as a ballet dancer. However, he was sidelined because of an injury, and he went back to school, and the London Studio Center and School of Ballet is where he took his ballet training, and then he went on to, at the age of 27, he entered the National Institute of Dramatic Art, Sydney, studying directing. He has had a wide and varied career all over the world, and he's produced operas like Ariadne Naxos, Euripides' Phaedra, Turandot, The Golden Cockerel at the Santa Fe Opera, Queen of Spades at Grange, Tosca Canadian Opera, and many other operas and opera companies. He's here to direct Tristan and Isolde. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Paul Curran.
Thank you very much, Terry. Can you do me a service, Jamal? Maybe too much reverb in this. Can everybody hear okay? Yes? Very good. So, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm very grateful that you would want to sit and listen to a director talk about their production of an opera. We always seem to be, and sometimes rightly so, the target of many questions, shall I say. I have had programs thrown at me. I'd rather they just send me the money. It was expensive. It was €9, just throw the money on the table. So that's actually what I would prefer tonight. I'll talk for a little bit. I'll give you what we're doing with this production. But what I want you to do now, straight away, is think of a question. Let's not have that embarrassing lull at the end when you go, oh shit, am I supposed to think of something? Let's do the oh shit moment right now. So if there's a question that's buzzing in your brain, why did you wear this shirt? Oh, answer, it was clean. That's a good question. But everything else that you've been wanting to ask, and particularly you want to ask of a director, and particularly about Tristan comes at a certain age, at a certain time, in certain circumstances, and it's usually just once. So this is 3 times. Let's hope I don't screw it up. That's what I'm thinking. So you've got to be prepared, you've got to be ready, and you've got to be enthused to approach a piece like Tristan. I asked a composer, I did a world premiere a couple of years ago, and I asked this composer, I took a score in it, and the composer, and I said, what do you want from this? This is before we started rehearsals. He took the score, handed it back to me, and he said, this or better. And I thought, wow, that's incredibly perspicacious. I said, well, I hope you like it, but if you don't like it, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care. Because what I do as a director is entirely subjective. This is my opinion, this is my vision, this is how I see it. The same way as you look at a painting or a colour or a movie, that is the vision of the creator, of the person that has done it. What we have in opera, though, as directors, is we are much more, I would say, interpretative as well as creative artists. So we have to create what I'm sure you've heard of before, the Gesamtkunstwerk, the altogether artistic work, meaning our responsibility is what it looks like, how it plays, is it boring or not boring, who the characters are, collaborating with the musicians. So it's the whole thing. That's what Wagner's ideal was for all his pieces, was this Gesamtkunstwerk, was the whole thing together. So as a director, you are, I would say, that Tyrone Guthrie described it as the first among equals, because you are the leader of a team. I cannot do this without a team. It's impossible. I am not a master of everything. I must say the team at the San Francisco Opera is outstanding. I'm not just saying that because I'm here, because if it wasn't, I'd be moving over this part. But the team here in every area, since we got here and in the summer time, has been absolutely astonishing. So, of course, it helps when you're putting a piece together. We had a slight technical moment. I took some rehearsal video on my phone, but for some reason we can't play it. So that's not going to be. I'll show you some pictures. Don't worry, we're pretty pictures. And I'll show you some video from the last time I did it. This production was originally done for the Wagner Bicentenary, 2012-13. Wagner was born in 1813. The same year as Giuseppe Verdi, and I did it originally at the Teatro La Fenice in Venice. It was a celebration piece, and it was an interesting experience. Being Italy, it was chaos from start to finish. Surprise, surprise. I think it was my 4th or 5th production at the Fenice. Recently at the Fenice, I just did Ariadne's Naxos, and before that, Pisa Grinds. So I'm pretty used to chaos. Coming here is a surprise that everybody actually does stuff. It really works. So when we got here and the staff said, what happens in this bit here? And I was like, look, I can't remember what I had for breakfast. I certainly can't remember what I did 12 years ago in a Wagner opera. So what we've done with this now is we've really started from scratch. We've taken the sets, we've developed the costumes, and we've really started from scratch for the San Francisco Opera. We also did another thing with the San Francisco Opera, and that is that the company has bought this production rather than rented it. So it belongs to the San Francisco Opera, which means it could be done again. When you start doing a new piece, just pull this up. Have you thought of a question yet? Good. Hold on to that. When you start doing a new production, of course, as the director, you need to understand the history, you need to understand the reasoning behind everything. You do an enormous amount of research. Coming to Tristan for me was a You can't just ignore Verdi and Rossini and all that. Well, I can, because this piece I absolutely adore, which makes it more difficult to approach because you feel a great responsibility. But I've done plenty of Wagner before. I've done it to Denmark once, I've done Fliegende Holländer 3 or 4 times, Tannhäuser and Scala, which was meant to come here, didn't. So, you know, the world of Wagner was nothing new to me. Terry very smartly said, the first opera I ever saw was Wozzeck. She's right. I stood through 6 performances of Wozzeck, age 15. They played it at the end of the season. In a second run, they did 5 performances with a then unknown conductor that Sir Alexander Gibson was giving a break to, giving him his first opera. His name was Simon Rattle. It was his very first opera, and I stood through another 5. I couldn't believe it. The second opera I saw was Tristan. I was mesmerized. I was an usher at English National Opera. I stood through every single performance every night. Third opera was The Merry Widow. I'll leave that to you. The piece is a strange piece in that it's written in 1865. It's written at the height of where Verdi is coming into his own, where French opera is very much overtaken everywhere in the world, and it is the least French grand opera ever written. It's a piece really that is absolutely jam-packed with symbolism, with philosophy, with this extreme view of the human state. I'm not going to go on ad nauseum about Schopenhauer and the philosophy of this. I'll leave that to you to do a bit of research on, and other people know much better than me. But Schopenhauer, Friedrich Schopenhauer's philosophy, that Wagner was a great advocate of, was very much about the human tendency to constant desire. Just desire driving everything we do, and that the ultimate end of desire is death. Not exactly a Disney night out. This is not a happy philosophy, I think. What's interesting with Tristan and Isolde is that it ends in death, but it doesn't go towards death. The death is the resolution to the ability to live in peace with their consciences and their souls. So these two don't destroy each other. They just move on. They move on to somewhere else. So the Liebesgruppe, particularly in this production, I've left very open. You don't know if she dies or she doesn't die. Wagner makes no indication in the score whether she dies or doesn't. He definitely dies. But the Liebesgruppe, I think, should leave us with, like the end of Peter Bryant, it should leave us with more questions than we enter the space with. We should be saying, what next? Not where's the sequel, but what next? What's going to happen? So having looked at that, its symbolism is very much of the day and the night. The first act takes place on a ship. Quick question, and don't be embarrassed if you haven't. Has anybody not seen Tristan? Not. Few people. Okay. You're in for a treat. You're in for not only a treat, you're in for seeing and hearing one of the greatest works of art in any medium, I firmly believe. This piece changed, of course, history. It changed music. You have not seen one movie in the past 120 years that was not influenced musically by this piece alone. Forget Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, etc. The chord progression, the change, the complexity, the depth of the musical world of this piece is what started to change the history of music. Of course, there were people that hated it. There always are. People don't like what is uncomfortable. Clara Schumann said it was the worst thing she had ever seen, the most disgusting thing that she could ever think of. Nothing was more obscene than Tristan. For Clara Schumann, she was probably right. But what Tristan is, for me, is an ability to enter into another space, almost another realm. So if you're seeing it for the first time, people say, what should I do? Let Tristan wash over you. You won't get everything all the time. You won't get everything in the first go, but allow it just to wash past you, particularly the duet in the second act. My main thing as a director is storytelling. I very much want to tell the story, and that's quite an old-fashioned view of quite a revolutionary idea in directing. Oh, a clear story. Wow, that's bizarre. Who does that? Well, I do. I always have that. How do we tell a story? Characters. Like HBO. You know what HBO is always to be? Characters and relationships. So the main thing for me is to develop the strength of the characters. Who are these people? And what's their relationship with each other? We're very lucky here to have a cast that is absolutely world-class in quality. Most of them have sung at Bayreuth, Metropolitan Opera, all over the world, and all the main Wagner repertoire. That is an enormous help when you're putting a piece like this together, because you have to take their experience, and we're going to come in a second to how you actually rehearse a partner. You have to take their experience and their knowledge and add to it. The director, in my book, and keep in mind what I said at the beginning, this is entirely subjective. This is my view. This is not a Bible. This is not how it should be done, how I believe I do it. And that is, they need to have an interpretation. I firmly believe the director guides what they do, but they need to have a strong interpretation. And this cast most certainly has that. Simon O'Neill is absolutely phenomenal, and the third act is quite astonishing what he's doing. Anya Kampa, world-leading Wagnerian, Conjure. Here's an example, character, King Mark. So King Mark, if you don't know the piece, King Mark is the uncle of Tristan, and he is betrothed to Isolde, and the story revolves around Tristan going and bringing her to Cornwall from Ireland. When we go to the big scene in Act 2, it's about 20-25 minutes that the king sings. Guangzhou has sung it at Bayreuth, at Metropolitan, Vienna, I think London, all over the world. But I asked him to do something that he had never done before. That was not dress in a monkey suit and swing upside down when we see it. No interest to me. But I asked him to look at the text, and I asked him to see how many questions were in the text and how many statements. It's about 90% questions. So with Guangzhou, I said, to make this scene come alive, forget anybody else is there. It's just you and this boy. You brought this boy up. You took him in as your son. Your wife died childless. You brought this boy up. So you're asking personal questions to him. Why have you shamed me? Why have you given me this pain? Why have you done this? And it's not a general thing of the king. It's a personal thing of the man and the father figure. Guangzhou said, I think quite alarmingly, that nobody had ever asked him that before. Nobody had ever considered, because normally it's just a big monologue. What it has done is it's made the scene much more a duet between King Martin and Tristan, rather than just the king saying all this stuff for 20 minutes. We very much developed the characters. One of them I was saying earlier was King Mark. Another one that I believe very firmly in is the character of Blangena. So Blangena is often seen as the servant maid to Isolde. But in that hierarchy of that society, she would probably also be a noblewoman. So, she's not the checkout lady at Costco. With all due respect to checkout ladies at Costco, very, very helpful, I must say, finding new boxes and all that. But she's not that. She is a noblewoman of some standing. So there's an intelligence there. She's kind of like Despina in Così. All the secrets come in and out of Blangena. So again, we're trying to make, and this young woman we have here, Annika Schlicht, is absolutely world-class. You're seeing somebody at the beginning of a major Wagnerian career. So you'll see that her character in this production is also quite developed. I'll show you picture time. I'll show you a couple of pictures of where we've gone with the piece. This is how Act 1 looks. So Act 1 is set in a ship, and what our see in this, and I was going to show you in the video, the video's not working, is it begins with just one single light swinging in the middle of that space, very slowly. If you look at it too carefully, you feel slightly seasick, and that's the very idea, to give you the idea of this motion. And we talked earlier about symbolism. The symbol of the ship, the symbol of the wind. The piece begins with an insult. A sailor actually voices a vicious insult to Isolde, who is an Irish princess, basically saying she's like cattle. She's just a tax that's being paid by Ireland to keep Cornwall happy, otherwise they'll invade. And she's furious. Her first line, Wagner Society, is who dares to insult me? But in that, we talked about the wind being very much a symbol of destiny. On a ship with sails, or any ship that's moving in the ocean, the tides, it's only going in one direction. Her destiny is getting closer and closer. And the first act of Tristan is under a tight pressure. I think of it as being a little bit like a Puccini opera in many ways. There's no extended moments, everything's in real time. And she's really determined to get her vengeance on this man she saved, who lied to her. Okay, the lies are a little bit silly. His name's Tristan. And when she said, "What's your name?" he said, "My name is Tantris." I mean, it doesn't take a Philadelphia lawyer to figure that out. So she's understandably not happy with this. So our first image is of this thing. The cage thing represents just her being caged, except she's not in it. She refuses to have anything to do with this transaction. She stays outside. The men end up in the cage. We take that. The end of the first act. A little backstage picture. This is backstage. This is how we create that effect of lights going through. So it's all ugly and sludgy backstage rather than, what you see, the perfect image in front. Also in Act 1 we get to the love potion. For those of you that don't know the story, Isolde decides the only way to settle accounts between her and Tristan is for them to drink a potion of atonement. And that, she decides, is going to be a death potion. So it's I would say, I'm going to say double suicide, but it's a murder suicide, really, because he doesn't know. But Anganus switches them out. And Anganus switches them out and makes a love potion go into the glass. And there's a little bit, I'm going to check if I have a picture. There's a very famous picture from San Francisco of Melchior and Flagstaff holding the love potion. So little notes to that when she presents the cup to him. You'll see it's exactly the same in the picture. This is when Brangena is opening the box with all the magic potions in it. And again, to go back to how a director sees a piece, how a director discusses a piece. This piece, musically, text-wise, philosophically, theatrically, I cannot see as a domestic kitchen sink drama. Nothing about this says to me it's set around a kitchen table. These are enormous ideas. And if opera does anything, theatre doesn't very much. Opera does it more. Opera talks really about extremities in nearly every piece. Name me one piece that is not about an extremity. Any ideas? The Merry Widow. Well, she's got to get married, but it's extreme. She doesn't want to get. Would you want to get married again? And they're like, no, bye. But she has to politically get married, so that's an extremity. So she's testing all these men on her terms. Similarly, Flanagan is the same thing, where this woman's having an Italian tenor, desperate to be in her bed, and she's tempted, but not tempted, but kind of tempted anyway. It's nearly always about extremities. So this piece for me, we've costumed them in a sort of more, I would say, Game of Thrones world. So it's not contemporary and it's not old. is not about reality, it's about ideas. We need to believe in the characters who are telling the story, keeping the story going. But it is not, as I said, for me, it's not a piece where I see her in a deal or a twin set. Why would Isolde buy a deal or a twin set? It doesn't make any sense. The Princess of Ireland? You'd think she'd go shopping in Paris or something, and you wouldn't buy a deal or a twin set. So when I see it domesticized, I think it misses an element that is intrinsic in the music, and that is this otherworldly enormity of this piece. We'll move on to a couple of other slides, pictures. This is a picture of Act 2. And Act 2 is outside the walls of the castle. So ours is outside the walls of the castle with a tree, symbolic tree, the tree of life, but it's just starting to flower. And the castle is a place, the back of the castle is a place where she privately can meet with Tristan for this Tristan. Why did we set it there? Several reasons. It's what it says in the score. The other reason is, this production we had almost no money in the budget, which is quite considerably difficult to deal with. So in fact, what that is, I'm sure you figured it out, is actually Act 1 reversed. It's exactly the same set. So we got our money's worth on the same floor, with a tree in it. I said I'd talk about the challenges or difficulties of how we stage an opera. So this is a shot from the Love Duet. The Love Duet in Tristan is 40 minutes long, probably the longest love duet written in any piece. Well, it does present a few difficulties for the director and for the cast. Some of it at the beginning, the whole opening of the play is so loud. It is for the singers. The orchestra is loud, they're loud. Here's the bizarre thing. They can't stand next to each other, or they'll go deaf. Also, you want Simon and Neil screaming in your ear? I would not want that. I've had it for 6 weeks. So we have to deal with that. We also have to deal with the fact that if their voices are covering each other, it's very difficult to hear the orchestra. So part of the whole deal in this is we have to look for positions, literally positions that are comfortable to sing in, that they can sing for 40 minutes non-stop and then all the way through to the end of the act, and that they're able to produce their voices. It would be marvellous to stage this like an Alan Bennett play, where everybody's sitting around a desk and it's all comfortable and easy. This does not have the requirements of an Alan Bennett play because nobody in Alan Bennett has to sing or produce their voice at this size, volume, speed, and enormity. So that's another part of what the director does, is to try and balance that and work out with them how they're going to be with each other. I'm trying to find another picture that demonstrates this, which is... So this is the beginning, at the end of the Act 1 duet, where it gets quite fast. And the orchestra gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We did try this with them standing next to each other. Absolutely impossible. Imagine having to sing something with a screaming child that's 2 years old, in your arms, in your ear. That's kind of what it sounds like. Also, it changes the pitch. They can't hear the pitch quite as well of what's going on. So we have to find clever ways of constantly moving them and keeping them in a position where they can produce a voice and still telling the story. It is, let me tell you, it's not easy. It takes quite a lot. But we approach it with humor, we approach it with fun, and it seems to work out. One other thing that happens when you do a show is Tristan has many off-stage challenges. So there are horns. At the beginning there's a sailor off-stage. The chorus is off-stage, so we need to get them in a position that we can hear them. and the horns at the beginning of Act 2 are also off stage. So ours are out in the house, because they're meant to sound very distant. If they sound too close, it doesn't make any sense to the story. Another part of Act 2 is when, at the beginning of Act 2, Brangena warns Isolde, Melot, who is Tristan's best friend, is spying on you. He's been watching, he's always creeping around, he's basically a stalker, it's going very badly, and I'm warning you, he knows what's going on, and he's going to find out. Isolde doesn't take it very seriously, she said, don't predict it, this is his best friend, who cares? You're crazy, guess what happens? Now it shows up with King Mark, it all goes pretty badly. There's one element in this that we had to deal with, which is, Brangena sings this warning off stage. It's meant to be very mystical and all that. Every theatre is different. Every theatre has a different setup backstage, depending on the theatre itself and depending on what else is in the repertoire of the theatre at the time you're doing it. We tried everything to make this work with Annika off stage. It didn't work. I came up with a solution that I didn't entirely agree with myself, but I said, okay, lemons will make lemonade. So what we did was this. I put her all the way on stage, as far away as we can get, so the voice sounds very different. And instead of pretending she's not there, I put her, actually, this is not quite what we eventually raised her higher on a box, and we lit her, so she looks like this very mystical being way in the distance. And the sound then works, the sound really works. I'll move on to Act 3. The Act 3 set is revealed. I'll show you it if I can in the video, if the video works in a moment. The Act 3 set is in Callio, which is where we would call Brittany these days. And it's Tristan sitting, he's outside and he's overlooking the sea for Isolde to come back. He's been mortally wounded, fatally wounded by Melot, and he's dying. And it's got one of the most extraordinary introductions to any act of any opera ever. It's low cello basses that play this very dark thing. I'm trying to look at it for a second. But where we took it was here. So again, it's exactly the same set. You get your money's worth, and we've now moved it and suspended it above. All three sets have a reason for being like that. The reason is, for me, acoustic. I don't want Tristan and Isolde set in a place where I'm doing this to try and hear them. Because Wagner makes some of the biggest, most lush, enormous noises you'll ever hear on a stage, and also some of the most intimate, tiny things. In Act 3, there's a part where it's literally this tiny pizzicato in the bass, when Corvinal thinks that Tristan has died, just before he wakens up. He's absolutely convinced he's dead. And again, talking about extremity, I've been saying to Wolfgang Koch, our Corvinal, if you believe he's dead, the audience will start to believe it. So the acoustic was vital. What these three sets do is they deliberately reflect the sound. So that what we can do, and we've been brave with this, is bring the intimacy way down. If the whole thing is roared at the top of their voice from start to finish, it has none of the nuance, it has none of the, what the Italians call sfumatura, none of the smokiness, none of the subtlety of what this piece was when it revolutionized theatre. I'll see if I can find you the opening line 3, because we do have one special thing. Here we go, Jamal, it's my work. This is not here, this is when we did it for Fenice, so it's close at first. The idea for me of the opening of this act was the music and the pain of this man who is moments away from death. So the curtain goes up very slowly. Still going out. The idea of this, as I said, is to find and not understand entirely what's going on at the beginning of the third act. Is he dead? Is he alive? He's going through the act, but is he dead? Is he alive? I'm on the questions at this point. And where this came from, this is an archival video, so it makes it look much darker than it really is. But where this came from was very personal. My father in 2008 was dying, and he had throat cancer and emphysema. And when I went to see him, I looked at him, and all that went through my mind, what just kept going through my mind, was this music. Because he couldn't hold a paper cup. Impossible to hold a paper cup. You would put it in his hand and it would just fall, and it would dribble all over the floor. He would try and kept going. And I said to my father then, I said, because we laughed a lot, he knew he was dying. No hiding it. And I said, I'm going to use this as a show. And he laughed and he said, I get to appear in an opera. Fabulous, I love that. So at least it had some use, some great use. Another challenge. Tristan and Isolde eventually comes in, Tristan dies, and they meet for the last time, just enough time to see each other, and then he dies. Then we have a challenge. So this was a rehearsal the other day, and they've got to lie there for about the next 25 minutes. And I said, with all due respect to my New Zealand friend, I do not want to be looking at his backside for the next 25 minutes while all sorts of loveliness is going on. So the light was lowered. This is our two colleagues in rehearsal, taking it very seriously. I think we were discussing what cocktail we're going to have that night. When I come up, because the noise was deafening, I was like, excuse me, they're just chatting. So how you rehearse Tristan is very difficult. It's not easy to rehearse this piece. Rehearsing it takes skill because it's like asking Hussein Bolt, can you do the 100 meters 75 times at the same level? Impossible. They cannot sing this all day, every day at that level. It's absolutely impossible. So as a director, you have to help guide them, especially with Simon, say to him, take the voice down, mark it, because then a new energy comes in when the voice is applied. I've directed a lot of plays. I did a big play actually with some in Syracuse. If you're ever in Syracuse in Sicily, it was the most beautiful 2,500 year old amphitheatre down there in Syracuse. It was absolutely stunning and in Fedra there. Working with actors is wonderful. Singers, actors do not have this challenge of how to produce that size of voice. Here's the other thing. For a singer to sing big and loud, like Tristan in the third act when he's going crazy because of the illness, that's one thing. Tristan or Isolde to sing with the tiniest piano, pianissimo, intimately, takes just about the same energy. So you cannot leave that to chance. Part of the work of a director is to direct the singers in when you apply that energy and when you take it away. So it doesn't make it so simple. It's a more complex thing than you might imagine. I'm going to look again because this was going to be a whole different thing, but we're just doing it. That's a close-up of what he's lying on. So it's just an enormous big sofa chair because the idea is he's looking over. He's looking over the sea, waiting for this ship to come. But I chose, again, if you ask a director, why did you choose that chair? This chair I chose because it's a bit like an IKEA special. It's kind of 4-in-1. So the main part of the chair he's sitting on. Also, Simon's a big lad, so we needed a big chair so that he didn't look diminished by it, that the chair looked equally big, and was above all comfortable for him. He has to sing something that few other singers will ever come anywhere near in this. So he's got to be in absolutely right circumstances. Discomfort is not an option. Also, the two big arms of the chair become separate chairs. So we get out, he goes to one arm of the chair, the other arm of the chair, and then the fourth place is he ends up sliding onto the floor, and he can yet use the chair as a fourth thing to cling onto, and it's a little more intimate. This is quite a good picture. This is the cast doing notes. After the death of Tristan and Isolde, all laughing and having an absolute giggle the other night in rehearsal. So it just shows that you can have fun at Wagner. I think they're all discussing what sushi restaurant we're going to that night. Challenges. Always talk about all that. One main thing I should talk about, and I'm sure I'll get questions on it. Tradition. I always get the question, is it going to be a traditional production? The answer is, I don't know what you mean. Do you mean is it going to be equally as good or equally as bad as the last one? I don't know. I didn't see the last one. Do you mean is it going to be shitty? Very possibly, depending on what your definition of shitty is. Do you mean is it going to be fabulous? Very possibly. That's entirely up to you. I knew what tradition meant, but I thought I'm going to check, and I was right. Thank God for a good Scottish education in the classics. From the Latin word traditio, meaning to hand over. So tradition is merely, tradere, tradition is the first person singular, is a handing over of knowledge, information, and a way of doing things. So if you're asking me, is this going to be like it was before? The answer is no. Why? Today is today. I have no control over the past. And if we're only going to repeat what happened in the past, certainly art, science will never move on. Ever move on. Everything you see around you now has had these types of lamps, the electricity that become not gas. All of that has moved on. Similarly with an opera, with a production, we always have to move forward. Do we sometimes move it too fast? Do we sometimes move it in too exaggerated a manner? I would agree, we most certainly do. But guess who else did? Mr. Wagner. Mr. Wagner was a theatrical hooligan. Mr. Wagner ruffled more feathers than he settled. Mr. Verdi ruffled more feathers than he settled. They all did. Rossini did the same. They weren't writing Broadway tunes just for entertainment. They were writing to challenge the human experience, to challenge your heart, to challenge your soul, to challenge your mind, how you think about things. I want to walk into Tristan asking questions. I want to leave Tristan asking even more questions. Why did they have to die? What was that about? When you look at Wagner's life, there's a lot of controversy whether he did an affair with Matilda Wezendonck. I mean, let's be honest, the man was, he was not exactly Mother Teresa, was he? That one, when he did the first listening playthrough of Tristan, there was two of his lovers there. Miss Van Bulow was there as well, with her husband, who eventually conducted it. So his situation around the whole thing of creating Tristan in this scandalous affair with Matilda Wezendonck, if you listen to the Wezendonck leader, the Tide House, you've just heard the Tide House, it's the opening line through Tristan, put it in there. It's all about him. People knew about his life. So he was immediately pushing the envelope, pushing the idea. He was being as provocative as he could with this piece. It was not appreciated back in the day. It came later. Carmen was the same. Carmen was a disaster at its premiere in 1875. And Bizet thought he had written the worst piece he'd ever written. It all became a success after the poor man died. He was very young. So tradition, is it going to be traditional? As I said, I don't know, because I don't really know what tradition means. But what I do know, what it means is, if we don't interpret works for our own age, for today, we're lost as a society. They were telling me that we've got a lot of school kids coming to the dress rehearsal. Christ, that's a lot for school kids, isn't it? I mean, my husband's 40, he's coming, I'm terrified. I'll need to smash the phone. He's a millennial. God, no, and he knows. If I don't take the phone out of his hand, I don't know how he's going to sit through it. But he's determined to do it. So tradition is very much about people thinking, I want a comfort zone of what was before. Allow yourself to get out of your comfort zone. Allow yourself to do what Wagner did with this, especially the beginning of his third act, in creating this ugly, dark, deathly sound that every one of us hears and every one of us has a visceral reaction to, because we've all lost people. That's brave, and that's what this piece is about. I'm going to ask you for questions, and I'll repeat the question. Lady?
I appreciate so much of your taking the voice into consideration in your direction, as understandably as how necessary that is. Do the singers have any input on that with you? If they say, I can't do that in this position, or at that angle, and then how much flexibility does the director have?
Did everybody get the question? Did the singers have input into how things are staged on the stage?
Especially getting over the orchestra.
Absolutely. So, one of the reasons, let me find a picture. One of the reasons that Anya is sitting there is because she, I don't care if she hears me say this, but she is a slip disc and she can't sit on the floor for too long. So I planned this in a completely different way. And meeting with her and talking to her, I said, okay, let's find a way. Let's find a way. Silent and roll on the floor, do whatever you like. It's like a child in a ball pit. Just throw them anywhere for a great time. But she can't do that. So we found this other way of her her sitting for quite a while. And on the tree, you put this seat around the tree. Actually, it works remarkably beautifully. Because one of the big things was, I didn't want to do with this duet, was choreograph it like it's 42nd Street. You don't want in that duet people running around and videos going all sorts of crap. Well, I don't know. But what I want was just a concentration on the voices and the moment. And it all comes down to that line where she says, these third line, this little word, und, Tristan und Isolde. The center of this piece, the distinct point of this piece, is the essence of feminism. It's a woman saying, I want parity with you. I don't want to be better, I don't want to be worse, I don't want to be treated like cattle. I want parity. Tristan und Isolde. And he agrees. So that's why we ended up in this position. I'll always negotiate with the singers what works, and they just get fed up with me because eventually they'll say, well, I can't do this in this line, I'll sing it in the other line. I can't do this here. We always find that one. So yes, we always have that. Other questions?
Yes. After seeing many productions of Tristan, it seems one of the big challenges is the long, quiet orchestral passages when there's no singing, there's no stage notations about what they should be doing. How do you fill those times?
Did everybody hear the question? How do you fill the long orchestral passages in a piece like Tristan? Well, it depends on what that scene is about. Personally, I don't want 4 candles smoking on, getting in the way. I don't understand that. And in a lot of this, because these two have done other productions of Tristan, it took them a while for me to convince them to trust, just sit there, just enjoy it. Let us, the word attraction from Italian and Latin, attrattare means to pull towards. It doesn't mean to push up. Let us come to you. Just trust in the stillness. Big difference between static and stillness. Static is a buzz of energy somewhere that's going nowhere. Stillness is a capturing of energy. It's a holding of energy, like holding your breath. And that's what all of these passages for me are. So I entirely trust the music. There's even one moment where she runs off stage and there's nobody on stage. Okay, I'll tell you why I did it originally in Venice. The soprano was doing Tristan and Isolde for the first time, and she said, Paul, I don't know how I'm going to get through. How the hell am I going to get through this duet? She'd done Wagnerian along her career, she moved on to soprano. And I said, well, what's the problem? She said, I don't know, where will I get the energy? I need energy. How can I do it? And I said, give me a second. Okay, done. Do you like bananas? Darling, what? Bananas? Yes. Lovely. So what she did was she said to Brangina, turn off the fackel, the fire, as a sign that Tristan can come into the thing. She ran all the way up stage, and this is what she did. As she ran, so imagine this is downstage where the audience is. She did this. She hung on to the side of the set, and her dresser stuffed a banana in her mouth. 15, 20 minutes later, the sugar from that banana, she was like, marvelous, love it. The opening of Act 2, when Tristan comes in, he comes in with a bag, he comes in with a sword, and the first thing we have him do after the long first part of the duet, he has a ceremony where he pours her a drink, and they share from the same goblet. So, the concept is that it was like the atonement drink in the first act, and then they're having their atonement together. That's a great idea. The reality is, if they don't have water, they're not going to get through that duet. In curiously, Venice or London, it was Gatorade. Gatorade Productions present. Yeah. Other questions? So the question is, do I see it, as Wagner said, a musical drama in 3 acts? Yes, I do, because he was very much rejecting the idea of French conte de l'art. So French grand opera was very formulaic. If we go back to 1845, when he wrote Tannhäuser, the idea of Tannhäuser, if I went to Paris, was that it had to have ballet in it, usually in the second act. So where do you put a ballet in the second act of Tannhäuser? It's why Fidelio was never played in Paris. Where the hell do you put the ballet in Fidelio? So he was rejecting that idea of it being formulated as a grand opera that the ballet had to be used, and he went completely in his own way. So I absolutely agree. There's a music drama. Remember Tchaikovsky, when he wrote Eugene Onegin, did not call it an opera. He called it 7 lyric scenes. So it was an opera. Other questions?
I'm curious to hear that you had been a professional dancer.
Yes, don't go down. Many years and many kilos ago.
I just wondered that sense of kinetic of the body and space and the kinetic movement that you have informs and really, I think, makes you different as a director.
It very much does, because and certainly in this, a lot of what we worked on with the singers was body language. So body language is, which if I, for example, were to do this talk like this, that would be a bit bizarre, wouldn't it? I mean, you'd eventually be saying to Terry, can you call emergency services? This person's mentally ill. What is he doing? Because this is a very strange way to speak to a group of people. So psychologists tell us that we get 80% of our information in any conversation linguistically through physicality and body language. It is absolutely essential in body language, and this comes from a dance background as well as a drama background. So I also went to drama school, in which how are Tristan and Isolde looking at each other? When he first comes in to meet her in the first act, they gave it to him as Gewünscht. Is she facing him? Not in this production. She will not turn to him. And the idea is, why would she? I'm the Princess of Ireland. You're not. So it's quite rude, because they've been so rude to her before. So we deliberately build in this other language, which is the physical language that makes him unsettled. And she said the reason I took that is because in the text, she says constantly to Brangena, yes, that guy, the big hero who can't even look at me in the eye. So that was developed as a body language as well. Similarly here, what's the body language? Could this be, as I've seen in other productions where they strip down to the underwear and all the rest of it? Yes, it could. As Simon said, would you want to pay for that? Someday. But this is much more the idea of their souls connecting with an eroticism and a sensuality rather than just a sexuality put into it, which I think you can tell in a very different way. Who else? Let me see. Young lady.
You said you did this the third time. So is there a progression of ideas, or how do you get to new, or how do you see that?
Yes, I mean, hopefully you get better as you get older. I did do one show once, and I actually got worse every time. I did an Otello once. I did it 3 times, and everyone got worse than the one before. And I don't know why. I can't explain why. It was just crap. So, sorry if you paid for the ticket, but it was shit. And yeah. But this is still better, I'm pleased to say. They usually do. Yeah, when you do it, you have a comfort, you have a knowledge, you have an experience of, as I said, directing this, if you're a beginner, do not go near this if you're a beginner. This is a minefield of problems. As I said, we designed this deliberately that it would reflect sound, because I've been directing for 32 years. I know that we need to be able to hear small and intimate sounds as well as big sounds. I know this is an open pit, so that if we don't reflect the voices are not going to meld with the orchestra, the voices are going to be a wall of sound with the orchestra, as I discovered at Scala, because the acoustic was not great before it was renovated. So yeah, you hopefully develop and get better as time goes on. It's not always the case, I don't fully recommend. But yeah. Yes, other questions? No.
Did you add, so sometimes when we see operas, it's like, oh, this would be a German princess. Given that you're from the Isles, did you add anything really for Irish or really for Irish?
The Irish element is actually in the costume. There's sort of a gold, it's like a green gold dress that she's got on, and they have sort of capes and things on that are more Irish. Yeah, that's about all that we added to it. The director, David Pountney, said a very, very sage thing once, which is that when you update a piece, and sometimes we have to, let me tell you, if you've ever seen Faramondo by Handel, set in the 5th century Gaul, I mean, who's it? Like the Flintstones. So I did this piece and I moved it to Las Vegas in the 80s, and it worked a treat. But Pountney said something very wise, very sage, which was sometimes when you update a thing, you end up creating a greater monster than the one you think you're killing. And we've all been with that. Young man.
My question for you is, as you've grown as a person, as an artist, as a director, kind of piggybacking off the previous lady's question, how has your vision for Tristan changed since Italy and London?
How has my vision changed? It's simplified. It's simplified. I'm definitely less interested. I wasn't much like 12 years ago, but I'm less interested in flashy shows of direction. I'm less interested in what people think. I'm much more interested in telling the story in the simplest possible way that has an immediacy to it, and that is a story that is really moving ahead. The third act is a good example of the pain that Tristan is going through at the beginning, and it came from not being afraid to use personal experience. I had a horrible experience last year. I actually nearly died. I got a secondary infection. It was called, for the doctors in the room, it was called 40 years gangrene, and if my husband hadn't intervened, I would have been dead within 3 hours. But there's 11 operations later, I know what it's like to lie there, basically bleeding to death, and writhing in agony. So it actually brought a far greater depth to what this was. Simon also had an operation on his leg. He had a really bad leg injury, and he actually had the same idea. He said, I get it, I absolutely get it. So that level of experience and depth would certainly not have come to me 12 years ago. So it does develop, and you just hope you're getting it right. More questions? Lady.
How do you decide on the art direction? Like, is it going to be stark, set, highly decorated, or the costumes be, very detailed, very stark? How do you come up with that vision?
How do you come up with a vision? No idea, really. So my process for doing an opera or a play is I will read it first. I read music, very lucky, I had a musical education. I read it from start to finish. No telephone, no bottle of red wine, no vodka, all the way through. I finish it when any idea comes to me, any idea comes. I will immediately either scribble onto the page or I'll post it note, and I'll see where those impressions come back to. After that, I'll listen to the piece and I'll see what the world of colour, of the music will bring to me. I'll add more impressions. I will make no decision whatsoever. That happens way later. Once all those impressions are washing around in my head, I'll come back to the piece, and then I'll start to think of the visual world. So, for example, a good example in this is if I show you the world of the colour, is the world of light for me. So what we do in lighting is usually lighting and responding to the music rather than simply just to the situation. That's a good idea. But I'm gaining potions. We just put a light source in it so that it looks slightly Harry Potter spooky. And it's a different colour to everything else around it. So I knew it needed to feel, because Isolde's mother has given her this, that it has to feel like it's from the magical world. I'm not afraid to make it magical. I'm not afraid to make it spooky and weird. Again, I don't want this looking like she'd just taken it out of the first aid cabinet, because that's drab. I don't want to see Tristan for drab. So that's what I'm concerned. Other questions?
Speaking of minefields, you probably have seen many other productions in the past, and I'm curious to hear which ones in the last 10 years you would consider inspiring.
Well, Tristan's in the last 10 years, I can't say I saw any that were particularly inspiring, to be honest. I found many of them just too kind of domestic, and I was like, I don't understand where we are, I don't understand why we're going through a turnstile, I don't get that. One thing I did find was, when I was 20-something years ago at Bayreuth, there was a production, I forget who did it, Maya, in Jerusalem, where the second act was all shields and breastplates. It was absolutely, oh my god, and it was very hard to get that out of my mind. But that visually, that extraordinary thing of it looked like an army was on the stage and they were going in and out of it. That really inspired me. I thought that was one of the greatest things I've ever seen on the stage. Normally, if I'm going to do a show, I will avoid looking at any productions of anything because I have a pretty retentive memory and I don't want to copy. For example, I will never direct the dialogue of Carmelites. Robert Carson did it way better than I ever could. I will never direct Fido Regiment. Laurent Pelly did it way better than I ever could. Never. That will stick in my head.
So, Tristan has not been part of the Central School of Ballet repertoire since 2006. Do you have any insight as to why it's been almost 2 decades since it's been performed? Is it production cost, complexity, singers, you weren't available?
I don't know. The answer is I don't know because I don't work for the company. I don't know, I'm not a member, a permanent member of the company. But I would imagine I ran the Norwegian National Opera for 5 years. So when you're thinking of a season, you've got to balance it with various things. And Tristan is extremely expensive to put on, all Wagnerians, and it's because of the amount of orchestra rehearsal time you need. So orchestras are in a contract, you can't rehearse in a week. It has to be spread out, it has to be lots of orchestral readings. That means if you're using it for that, you've got to spend more money on other, if you're doing other pieces at the same time. So I imagine it's a balance. It's also a balance of, is this going to put butts on seats? That's the other thing that we take into consideration. Also, if you're planning, so most companies will plan, I got an inquiry already yesterday about a production from 2027. Oh, actually, like 3 months from 27. Well, let's hope that the cast they're thinking of is still singing in 2027. Let's hope I'm still around in 2027. So it's a risk. I don't know why they haven't done it since. We were planning on doing this originally in, I think it was 2020 or 21 was the original planning for this. Obviously, that was stopped. When it was clear it could be done again, we agreed that to have the company come back, having not played to the orchestra, not played together for 2 years, it would be madness to begin with a piece as orchestrally complex as Tristan. So we all said, let's move it a couple of seasons. And I think this is absolutely the right time to do it. Other questions? Sir?
Before you use the word traditional, but I think if you query the audience who want something, period, the Knights of the Holy Grail should look like the Knights of the Holy Grail. And they're not doing operas that way.
Well, they're not doing operas that way because they're extremely expensive to do that way. To produce one period costume is in the region of $7,000 to $10,000. So if you do Don Carlo, you have a whole chorus of period costumes. That's a very expensive show. The Knights of the Holy Grail were done that way in Wagner's time. Remember, they would have been a 19th century you look that they only knew from a few paintings. So it's all really a point of view, it's all really how you see it. Most 19th century operas were done with a 19th century viewpoint, really. But it's one of the biggest reasons people don't do it is expense. It really is that expensive. I've been asked recently to do a production, we want a period production of Central and West, and I said, well, where's the budget? I mean, where's the budget? In 2004, I did a production of Wozzeck. We were asked to do it in 2002. In 2003, the price of steel doubled. My budget immediately halved. In 2004, the price of steel doubled again. My budget went to a quarter of the worth of what it was originally. So there was no chance we could then build period production. I've done a lot of things in period productions. But let me tell you, it is far more difficult to direct a period production and make them look like real people than it is to have them in big leather coats and shaved heads. That shit's easy. Anybody can do that. Call Castro, you'll find all that. It's easy. But to make somebody in a big ball gown or something like that feel like a real human being, that's a challenge. That really is a challenge. More questions? Sir?
This is, I think, the third or fourth time you've seen Tristan. I admire it, enjoy it very much. But it almost found the most difficult part personally. Act 3, Tristan's long fever dream, if you will. Any thoughts on how to think about that segment of the opera, way to listen to it, or approach it?
The question is how do you approach Tristan's, let's call it delirium, in Act 3? Well, the way to look at it is he should be dead long ago. I should have died last year, to be honest. The doctor, the infectious disease doctor, very cheerily, other than Palm Springs, very cheerily said to me, the last 2 patients I had with this didn't last 48 hours. I was like, oh, thanks. That's made my day. Wonderful. It's to look at it not only as a delirium, but the fact that he probably is, I'm married to a doctor, so I do my research, is that probably the sepsis that's going through his body and the speed of it is actually completely curdling his brain. And to look at it as a man who is clinging on to the last nanosecond of life. It's why, we had a big argument, a thrilling big argument, between me and Annika Parkin. We adore each other. But she did not agree with when they meet. She'd never done it this way. And how I have them meet is she says, Gerita, and as she moves towards him, he's still standing and then his legs go. And she then says, so she's saying, what's going on? And he takes her in a position that looks like the love duet in Act 2. And for a minute you think, they're together. Isn't this wonderful? And then his final word of the piece is, he's alone, and then he just dies. So what I want is to allow a second that we think, maybe, they'll keep going. To go back to your question, he's hanging on to life. Wagner gives you a fake entrance of the ship when he thinks he sees the ship. And Covent says, that's the kind of ship today, there's no ship there. So the delirium for me is about you as an audience member saying, just let him live long enough to see her. That's how I think I go through it. You question?
Yes. To what extent do you use visuals in this production? Using light to create what appears to be a cool things.
Oh, right. Well, a lot. Yes, we use a lot of lighting. It's extensive in this. But it's more, I suppose it's more impressionistic than realistic in this. Yeah, so it's not done to make real light. You never see water. And the end of Act 1 is a big change. It's not the ship opens up basically. You'll see. So it's, we use the lighting as very much describing the mood, describing the feeling of the show rather than this has to be water. video in this show. We decided not to go with that. Sometimes video helps. And I can tell you, I can assure you, had Wagner, Verdi, and all the rest of them had video available, they would have been using it. Remember, Wagner brings new instruments into this piece. He brings new orchestration. This is as much an interpretation from him of a new way of looking at opera as it is from us as directors and team. Last questions. Yes, oh, okay. Yes.
One of the favorite comments I've ever heard uttered about Tristan and Isolde came from the great director Nicholas Laycock. And he said, Tristan and Isolde takes place on the landscape of the human soul. And that says it all.
I would agree with that. That's very much what we're trying to do. Particularly in Act 2.
Just about people coming together and being broken apart and heartbreak and pain.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole idea of the Schopenhauer thing, of this desire and this pain, this agony that the human being goes through for themselves or for somebody else. That's a vitally important point. Now, any other questions from I'm going to be rude and ask for somebody under 35. So I know that excludes like very few of you. I'm going to ask for a question from somebody under 35. Have a think. Meanwhile, sir, you're asking a question.
Yeah, given the nature of the music and situations and such, have you ever found the need, or has anybody found the need for an intimacy coordinator?
A very good question. Talking about these days in theatre, have we found the need for an intimacy coordinator? We didn't have an intimacy coordinator on this. It's something that I've had a lot of trouble with, to be honest, as an idea, because I think it's part of what my training was, the sensitivity of working with actors and singers, and that we should be responsible for it. But of course, a lot of people will abuse that situation, and they don't have the skills. So a lot of people will find an intimacy coordinator extremely useful. There wasn't any need for one on this because, well, I guess management trusted that was not going to turn it into, pole dancing or anything like that. But I had one in Tosca last year, which was fascinating. She watched one rehearsal and she was like, oh great, I'm stealing half these ideas. So she left it alone. But I think it's when some directors are allowed to have a free rein and they get outside the boundaries of what our job actually is, that can be quite problematic. I know there's some singers. I had a singer once, Peter Grimes, who during a stage piano rehearsal picked up, and old Joe's going fishing, picked up a chair and threw it into the audience. So I had to stop and say, Mr. Blinkoff, no, not acceptable. Most theatres have them these days, mainly for liability. Intimacy coordinators, and maybe all movies have it, but that's the reason. And it's a good protection, I think, for singers. Everybody has to feel safe. I will never, ever do anything in a scene that I have not said explicitly to the singers, are you okay with this? And you do not need to feel you're going to do this. I'll never ever do that. And they can be very vulnerable. Acting is extremely vulnerable. Okay, then the 35s, show yourselves. Matt, really. Well, go on.
I'm not under 35, but do you have the audience in mind when you start the production? And that's related to the age as well. I mean,
With the audience in mind, yes, you do. I mean, culturally you do. The audiences in America will have a very different expectation from an audience in Munich, or an audience in Frankfurt, or an audience in Bologna. So yeah, you do have the audience in mind, but you can't only play to the audience. You can't really sort of dumb everything down or make it simplistic. I had an artistic direction once I was doing Albert Herring, who cannot absolutely, you cannot have this, you cannot have that. I was like, what was I doing? There was Alex Schrader was it actually, some company. There was a Union Jack on the table, and it was a picnic table for the May Day celebration, and the little cakes and all that on it. This is desecrating the flag. And I was like, desecrating true for your flag, but not for all flags. Certainly not the Union Jack. There's like, but people will get upset. It's like, well, screw them. I mean, if they don't understand, it's not my problem. But this flag was not even, it didn't even come together. The Union of England and Scotland came together in 1707. The Union Jack came together in 1807. These days, Scots still reject it. Nobody wants that flag. So if you come at me with an idea of, oh, you're culturally inappropriate, make sure you know your culture. Yeah? So you have to have an audience like that. Good example, Tannhäuser and Scala, they went berserk when Elizabeth walked on stage in a rehearsal in a purple dress. In Italy, wearing purple is a sign of extreme bad luck because it's the colour of Jesus' robe, right? And crucifixion. I'm like, are you really? Are you shitting me? 2,000 years later, I'm supposed to say, oh, wait a minute, the Jewish guy was in a purple robe given by the Roman boy? Oh, okay, so we won't use that. So she can't wear it. So you have to be culturally appropriate, otherwise you get into a lot of trouble. Yes?
I'm just following up on that question. What have you done with this production that is different from what you would do in the German production?
What have I done in this production is different from what people would do in the German production? Told the story. I've had arguments with German friends, oh, but my vision is something that, I'm like, good for you, you didn't mind it. Your job is to interpret it. Interpret what you're given. If you want to rewrite it, go and rewrite your own version. But our job is to interpret and create something. So yeah, that's the biggest thing, as you see, we just tell the story. As any of our under 35 decided to bring a question, go on, you have a question. Okay, I'm raising it to 40. Do we have any final questions from anybody? Anybody? Yes, sir.
Do you pay attention as a director to the people who sit in the balcony? Sometimes you can't see half. Once we saw only the knees down or something.
In this production, this is the love potion moment, for example. That is, so you can even see here, that's the prompt box. The furthest position on this stage is not even, it's a little more than a quarter of the way on the stage, is the furthest position we have on this stage, knowing that this is a very big theatre. But one of the unfortunate things is, the United States decided to build these massive theatres, not taking into consideration who's way up there at the back. In Italy, for example, we had to, in the Fenice is a strange theatre, it's a horseshoe theatre like that, except it's not like that. It's actually, it's got like a spare tire. It's a little bit of a bump in it. So people at the sides cannot see much at all because the seats in front of them are covering. So I had to move everything to the centre of the stage. We try as much as we can. We walk down. But if we were to make it the perfect view for everybody, it would be a solo concert on top of Complex, is the unfortunate answer to that. Yeah? Okay. Final question. Anybody? Again, 35s are letting the side down through lack of bravery. There. You can come and ask me questions. Oh, question at the second favourite. Was that? What's your second favourite? My second favourite. It's really hard to say. It's somewhere between. Very often it's what you're working on. But if I were to choose, it's probably Traviata or Siegfried, or doesn't stop, Parsifal, or actually a music course called The Golden Girl, which somebody told me that she'd seen, which I've directed several times. And if you've never heard this piece, have anybody ever seen seen the Golden Cockerel? Let me just tell you very quickly the premise of the Golden Cockerel, and I'll shut up. The Golden Cockerel premise is this. It was written in 1907. It was written as a protest piece by Rimsky because he was sacked from the imperial theatres because he protested at the Tsar shooting protesters, students who came out into the square, and he shot them dead. He protested so much at this that they fired him. He wrote this opera. Here's the premise. A fat, lazy Tsar who just wants to eat, and play sports, has got two sons, one more stupid than the other, a sycophantic bunch of ministers around him, and he thinks there's a threat on his borders. I am not making this up. So he decides what he's going to do is attack the border and attack the threat. An astrologer comes in who says, I have the perfect solution, I'll give you a golden cockerel, when everything's fine with the good, when everything's going crazy, crows all bad, months. Send the two sons off to war. He has a dream about this strange young woman. Off they go to war. Cockerel crows again. He's got to go to war himself. Act 2 goes to war. When he gets to the field, all the soldiers are dead, including the two sons. He sees a tent ahead. He thinks it's an army. He says, we'll just attack them anyway. It's on our border. He attacks the border, goes to the army, reveals it is a young woman from the east who he meets, seduces him, and he marries and brings her back, his Eastern European young lady. He brings, I'm not making this up, he brings her back, presents her to everybody, the astrologer shows up and says, okay, you promise me anything I want. Sure, what do you want? He says, I want her. And the Tsar says, don't be ridiculous, you can't have her. That's not going to happen. He said, but you promised in front of the whole court, anything. And he says, yeah, I mean, I didn't mean her. And he said, but you said it. Hold your promise. And he says, no. Takes his scepter, kills the astrologer. Cockerel goes crazy. Cockerel kills the Tsar. What do the chorus sing? The final thing. It's a beautiful phrase in Russian. They say, how would we be without a Tsar, without a leader? And in English, it's hard to translate. They say, in Russian, they say, Кто даст новые царя? Who will give us new dawns? Tsar. Как же будем? How are we going to be без царя? Tsar. How are we going to, this beautiful poetry, how are we going to be without a Tsar? Who will lead us? So it's a Tsar. That was his whole point. That's one of my favorite poems. It's a magic piece. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening.
Here in 2 weeks with Francesca Zambello, who's also going to talk about how the complexities of producing Wagner operas. And it will be here, same bat time, same bat channel, at 7 o'clock in 2 weeks on the 28th. I invite you to get to know the people around you. Jahan over here has a special deal for anybody who decides they want to become a member of the society today. He has a gift for you. So there's Jahan over there. He will give you our beautiful publication, which is devoted to Tristan and Isolde. So